The silent choice, when peace overcomes pleasure. The deepest betrayal you can commit is not against those who love you, but against those who believe they own you. How many times have you wondered if the pain you feel when you disappoint your family is really yours, or if it is the echo of a guilt that should never have been born? This is a journey into the darkest territory of the human soul, where blood ties become entangled cords that strangle us, where love disguises itself as control, and where freedom seems an unforgivable sin. Through the eyes of Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who dared to map the uncharted territories of the psyche, we will discover that choosing inner peace over family approval is not just an act of courage. It is a silent sacrament of individuation, a baptism in the murky waters of one's own unconscious. Jung, who dialogued with the demons and angels of his own soul, understood something that society still struggles to accept, that the greatest crime against life is not to hurt those who raised us, but to betray the inner child who cries out for authenticity. In an age where social media amplifies the chorus of other people's expectations, and where success is measured by the ability to satisfy everyone around us, his words resonate with an almost prophetic urgency. He reminded us that there is an authentic self hidden beneath the layers of personas we construct to survive the world's judgment, and that finding this lost essence inevitably requires disappointing those who expected us to be someone else. Imagine a young person who grew up being the perfect child, the one who never said no, who shaped his dreams according to family expectations, who chose his profession based on the pride he saw in his parents' eyes. He carries within himself a collection of masks so well fitted that he has forgotten what his true face is. Jung would call these masks personas, the faces we present to the world in order to be accepted, loved, approved of. But beneath every persona lies a shadow, that rejected part of ourselves that contains everything we deny ourselves. Our secret desires, our unexpressed anger, our stifled dreams. The family, that first theater where we learn our roles, often becomes the greatest obstacle to the encounter with our inner truth, not because it is malevolent, but because it represents the security of the known, the comfort of predictability. When a family member dares to question the established script, when he decides to write his own lines, the entire system trembles. It is as if a play were interrupted by an actor who decides to break the fourth wall and speak directly to the audience. The discomfort is immense, because it exposes the artificiality of the entire performance. The process that Jung called individuation is not a selfish journey as many believe. It is, in fact, the most altruistic movement we can make, because only when we become truly ourselves can we offer the world something authentic. But this path requires us to pass through the valley of the shadow, where all the aspects of ourselves that we have learned to hide reside. There live the rebellious son we never let exist, the independent daughter we sacrificed on the altar of approval, the artist we killed to be born as the professional we were expected to be. The pain of disappointing one's family is real and profound because it touches on the most primitive archetype of all, the fear of abandonment. Since the dawn of humanity, being rejected by the group meant certain death. That is why when we choose our inner peace, when we prioritize our truth over family harmony, we activate ancestral alarms that scream danger, that whisper that we are making a fatal mistake. The collective unconscious, this repository of experiences, common to all humanity, reminds us that survival has always depended on the acceptance of the clan. But Jung discovered something revolutionary, that in modern times the greatest danger is not external rejection, but internal betrayal. That dying socially for being authentic is less lethal than dying spiritually for being false. He realized that many of his patients' neuroses were born not from external traumas, but from the impossibility of living in accordance with their true nature. It was as if each soul carried within itself a secret map to its full fulfillment, but social pressure forced it to always navigate other people's routes. The moment someone decides to prioritize their inner peace marks the beginning of a symbolic death. It is the end of the version of themselves that was built to please others, the burial of the conditioned self that lived its entire life according to external expectations. This death is necessary, but it is not painless. It is as if we are saying a final goodbye to the obedient child we were, to the one who believed that our parents' love depended on our ability to fulfill their wishes, unexpressed. Jung observed that his most courageous patients went through a period he called the dark night of the soul, a time of direct confrontation with everything they had denied within themselves. During this period, the person comes face to face with their shadow, with all the rejected aspects of their personality. It is terrifying to discover that within us dwells not only the exemplary son, but also the raging rebel, not only the devoted daughter, but also the woman who dreams of leaving without looking back. This confrontation with the shadow is what allows true integration. We cannot become whole by ignoring parts of ourselves. Genuine inner peace comes not from eliminating internal conflicts, but from accepting our fundamental complexity. When we stop fighting our shadow aspects and begin to dialogue with them, we discover that they often hold the key to our creativity, our passion, our life force. Families, upon noticing this transformation, often react with resistance. It's natural. They're losing the predictable version of you, the one they knew how to handle, how to influence, how to control. When you choose your peace, you're essentially saying that you're no longer anyone's emotional property, that your feelings and decisions belong to you first. This is scary, because it breaks an unwritten contract that said you existed for the sake of others. Jung realized that many families function as closed systems, where each member has a fixed role that serves to maintain the overall balance. The responsible son, the nurturing daughter, the rebel who channels all the unexpressed anger of the system, each has his or her role. When someone decides to abandon their role, the entire system has to reorganize itself, and this generates collective anxiety. So often the family will try to force the person back into their previous role, using guilt, emotional blackmail, or even threats of rejection. But the person who has chosen their inner peace can no longer pretend to be someone they're not. It's like having tasted water that quenches the thirst of truth. It's impossible to go back to drinking only mirages. Authenticity, once experienced, becomes a sacred addiction. You discover that living in alignment with your true nature generates an energy that no amount of external approval can provide. Jung called this energy creative libido, the life force that emerges when we stop wasting energy on masks and start investing it in our own genuine fulfillment. It's as if, by freeing ourselves from the prison of other people's expectations, we can finally tap into our inner source of power. We discover talents we didn't know we had, develop courage we didn't know we had, find a serenity that doesn't depend on anyone's approval. The paradox is that by choosing our own peace over family harmony, we often create the possibility of more authentic relationships in the future. When we stop playing roles, when we show ourselves as we really are, we give others the opportunity to love us for who we are, not who we pretend to be. Some family members won't be able to make this transition. They'll keep trying to force us back into old roles. But others, inspired by our courage to be authentic, will begin their own. A journey of individuation. Jung discovered that there is a strange synchronicity in the lives of those who choose to follow their inner truth. Opportunities arise, people appear. Paths open up in ways that seemed impossible when we were trapped in the expectations of others. It is as if the universe conspires in favor of those who have the courage to be themselves. He called this synchronicity, meaningful, coincidences that suggest a hidden order in life. Choosing inner peace is not a single act, but an ongoing process. Every day, in small and large decisions, we have the opportunity to choose between pleasing others or honoring our inner truth. Each time we choose authenticity, we strengthen our true self. Each time we give in to external pressure, we feed our personas at the expense of our soul. Jung realized that the most fulfilled people were not necessarily those most loved by everyone, but those who managed to integrate their dark and light aspects into a coherent whole. They carried a serenity that did not depend on external approval, a strength that sprang from their connection to their deepest center. They had conflicts, yes, but they were authentic conflicts, not the phantom battles of someone who fights against aspects of themselves that they deny they have. The price of authenticity is high, but the price of falsehood is much higher. Jung saw patients who had spent decades living lives that were not theirs, developing physical and psychological symptoms as a way of protesting the betrayal they committed against themselves every day. The body, this primal wisdom that accepts no lies, finds ways to scream when the soul is being suffocated. When we finally choose our peace, when we prioritize our inner truth over the need to please, something profound changes in our relationship with the world. We stop being victims of other people's expectations and become protagonists of our own story. We discover that we can be loved not despite our flaws, but including them, that we can contribute to the world in unique ways precisely because we stop trying to be copies of other people. The journey of individuation never ends. There will always be new layers of personas to peel back, new shadow aspects to integrate, new levels of authenticity to achieve. But once we decide to prioritize our inner peace, once we commit to our deepest truth, we can never again live completely disconnected from our essence. Jung knew that this choice, peace over pleasing, is not just personal, but political. In a society that functions through control and conformity, each person who chooses their authenticity is an act of resistance. It is a silent declaration that there are values more important than social approval, that there is an inherent dignity in human beings that cannot be traded in exchange for acceptance. The family that cannot accept our choice for authenticity is, in fact, revealing its own fears, its own internal prisons. Often our courage to be true exposes the cowardice of others in continuing to be false. That is why the resistance is so intense. We are not only rejecting their expectations, we are mirroring to them the possibility of a different life, a possibility that may terrify them by revealing how many years they have wasted being who they were not. But there is a deep compassion possible in this process. When we understand that the pressure our family exerts on us arises from their own unresolved fears, from their own unintegrated shadows, we can maintain healthy boundaries without carrying resentment. We can choose our peace without necessarily declaring war. We can be authentic by keeping our hearts open, firm in our boundaries but not hardened by bitterness. Jung discovered that true forgiveness is not about forgetting or minimizing the hurt, but about understanding that those who hurt us were, more often than not, hurting themselves through us. The family that cannot accept our authenticity is projecting onto us their own unresolved conflicts with authority, with freedom, with the possibility of change. When we see this clearly, we can hold our peace without having to convince them that we are right. The greatest victory is not getting them to accept us as we are, but reaching the point where we no longer need their acceptance to be who we are. It is a radical, almost frightening freedom, discovering that we can exist fully even without the approval of those we love most, that our worth does not depend on their validation, that our fulfillment does not require their understanding. This is the ultimate promise of individuation, the discovery that we carry within us everything we need for a full life, that the approval we seek outside of ourselves already exists within us, just waiting for us to have the courage to turn to it, that the peace we so desperately seek is not on the other side of family acceptance, but on the other side of accepting ourselves, complete in our imperfection, whole in our fragmentation. When we choose peace over pleasing our family, we are not just making a personal choice. We are participating in the oldest and most sacred movement of humanity, the relentless pursuit of freedom, authenticity, and wholeness. We are honoring all those who came before us and had to choose between truth and safety, between soul and approval. And perhaps in the end, we will discover that this choice does not separate us from our family, but connects us to the larger family of all, those who dared to be true. That there is a spiritual lineage of authentic people spanning the centuries, and that by choosing our peace, we are taking our place in that golden stream of courage that flows through time, carrying the eternal promise that it is possible to live a real life in a world of masks.